Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to the Legends Library. I am, of course, Cade, here again today with Keith.
Hello, good people. It is good to be back.
Yes, and we are today going to be talking about the comic series, 6 issues long, entitled Star Wars Jedi vs. Sith. So basically, the big broad summary of this would be, it's the original story, I guess, of how the Rule of Two came to be, and it kind of came about specifically after Darth Bane was mentioned in the Episode 1 novel. And of course, in Episode 1, we have Yoda's line that only two there are, no more, no less, and basically this just explains as to why that rule came to be.
Right,
So,
this was the original supplementary explanation for the Rule of Two.
Yep, and this came out in 2001, whereas obviously the first Bane novel came out in 2006, so predates it by about 5 years, as well as there was a tiny little short story that was released in Star Wars Gamer in, I believe it was 2001 as well, that came out in January, that details Bane actually getting the Orbalisk armor. So, kind of a weird, non-chronological telling of Bane's story, but nevertheless, we start off with issue 1, where in the prologue, a group of scavengers, I think it's 3 children and their father, are scavenging a battlefield that had obviously been fought on between the Jedi and the Sith, and Darth Bane promptly slaughters all of the father's children.
Right, yeah. There's no better way to start a gritty war comic than to show the just seemingly senseless murder of random children and family. Yeah.
Yeah, and it starts off, and that's obviously our introduction to Darth Bane. However, he is not named yet at this point, and you can just see that he's just some Sith who decides to, just kill a family. And I guess this would be the most appropriate time to touch on it, but the art is a very kind of interesting, stylized...
I was just about to bring that up, honestly.
Yeah. Take on everything.
Yeah, because it doesn't look bad. You know, it's very it's detailed enough, right? It's detailed enough to show what it needs to show. But just this scene, this is a very serious scene, and it's off-put by the cartoonish look of the characters. You know, like you see Darth Bane's, silhouette from the back, but he looks weird. His limbs look kind of like just weirdly angular and just like extended, like he's like a cartoon character. A little cartoonish, but
yeah, I
then
definitely.
His face is like dead serious though. It's like whoa, and it's all burned, or is that sweat?
Yeah, he's got like splotches on his face and like tiny little like bits of hair sticking off of his head, like little like stubble, I guess.
Right, stubble, yeah, his head.
But yeah, I guess your point is, I think that was a really good one. It is a very stylized art as opposed to like if you think of like the later stuff that came out, like the Republic comics or the Legacy comics, where it was a bit more of a realistic art style. This is much more kind of early 2000s stylized comic book art, and I think it definitely comes from that time period of just kind of comic book art as well.
Yeah, like the modern look and I guess arrangement of the panels, mixed in with that like just close up kind of, but at the same close up and like detailed, but at the same time still like undetailed, stylization.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm making sense there, but
Yeah, no, I definitely get your drift. But then, to contrast that immediately, on the next page, it brings us to Somov Rit, which is the planet that I would say our protagonist is from. And obviously this introduces the characters Rain, Tomcat, and Bug, which aren't actually their real names, but they kind of get into that later. But basically, Darvit, I would definitely say, is the protagonist of this 6-issue series.
yeah, you could certainly say that. Definitely one of the yeah.
It's just kind of it's kind of his story, I guess, and it kind of seems like his cousins, I guess, more play into his story rather than he into theirs. And as we're obviously going to get into, like, a lot of the story kind of revolves on his misadventures on Rusan when they get there. But it opens up and Bug is fishing and Rain is throwing fruit at Tomcat, who's blindfolded, and hitting them with a stick. And then basically we just get into them being recruited into the Army of Light by the Jedi tour. And yeah, he basically just says, "Oh yeah, you're all little kids, so we're gonna bring you out to war."
Right, yeah, these are just random little kids, I guess, just living by themselves on this planet. It's very scenic and pretty. It doesn't seem like there's anything going on. And here's just comes this old, hunched over, old man. He looks like he looks like 5 times older than freaking Alec Guinness in A New Hope. He's old as shit. And he's like, "Oh, come on, kids. Time to die."
Yep, and then again, we go from this nice, pristine, like, pretty looking planet with, like, the little streams that they're catching fish in, to a battlefield where a Jedi runs up to the Lord Hoth and tells him that the battle was glorious, my lord, and it's got a nice full little panel of Jedi and Sith fighting. And then this would be another good time to point out that the aesthetic of everything, in addition to the art style just being stylized, the aesthetic of it is very interesting because it's kind of an evolution of Tales of the Jedi, where Tales of the Jedi was kind of like a more ancient aesthetic with some Star Wars stuff mixed in, and this is a much more like medieval kind of Renaissance kind of aesthetic. Like, a lot of the Jedi and Sith are in like just straight up like medieval breastplates, and there's people with like spears. Later on, we see bow and arrows. There's lots of swords kind of on people's belts and everything.
They have those like, what are those poles that have the little flags, hanging from them, or like the pennant looking things?
Yeah, like a standard.
Right, and like they even have like the tents that look like those classic like military tents.
Yeah, like it looks like if you took away the lightsabers, it would look like a generic fantasy, like Dungeons and Dragons setting.
Yeah, like these purple tents and like this very verdant green grass. They got these like like this bright red capes and stuff mixed in with like the shiny silver armor.
Yeah, and another good thing to mention would be is the Jedi. It's kind of the thing how it's always been, where like the Jedi have a lot of different colors mixed in. Like, there's a lot of like bright, like you said, bright red capes. Lord Hoth has like a purple cape. And their tents are like purple or blue in this case. There's like lots of different colors mixed in, and then later when we see the Sith, they're in like the Sith stuff. Like, they're in like black leather like battle armor.
Yeah, a lot of the Sith armor wouldn't look too out of place in any era, I would say, really, of Star Wars.
Yeah, but then contrasted with the Jedi armor, which is like they look like knights, like Jedi knights.
Yeah. Yeah, you could you could like it or not like it, but I would say it's definitely an improvement over just everybody wearing
robes.
Everyone wearing robes all the time.
Yeah, and I think the only problem with that is that I think 2 years later KOTOR came out and kind of poo-pooed the idea of like these ancient aesthetics, because it's basically has the same like technology as like the current Star Wars, like the original trilogy and prequels and stuff. So
Yeah,
it ended up getting undone, and then even later with the Bane novels as well, they ended up kind of overdoing it. Like, there's no mention of bow and arrows or breastplates with the like fleur-de-lis on them.
Right, and they did have Tales of the Jedi to work with at the time for continuity, when it was even older
Yep.
than this. And but hey, they went for what they went with. But it does seem like this is somehow older than the Tales of the Jedi era, which was old, but it was very advanced, civilized, tons of huge ships and stuff. And immediately off the bat, this it just seems very, I guess, terrestrial. You could say, like they're very grounded. They're
Yeah.
it's like a regular old army. They're like they're a soldier army. They're not an army of ships and things like that. It's more about the soldiers, the Jedi versus the Sith fighting kind of thing.
Yeah. And well, basically, what's going on is they're bringing obviously the message that the Jedi won that last battle, and that Valentine. We kind of get like Valentine Farfalla is name dropped, and obviously we get the impression that Hoth doesn't like him, and we also get kind of a good line that I like between Pernicar, who is basically Lord Hoth's right-hand man, where Hoth kind of scoffs because, we're sending children against Khan, and then Pernicar replies that, well, if we don't send them, then Khan is going to send them against us. And then we cut back to the Jedi tour, and the kids, who are now joined with another brother and sister, who are also going to join the Army of Light. And again, these are all like children. Like, Daravit looks like he's maybe like 12, 13, like kind of tween years. Bug looks to be maybe a couple years younger, and then Rain is like yeah, she's like a little girl, like but no, there is a really cool part where Bug and Rain are talking, because Rain is like just staring out the ship window as they're like flying through space, or I think it's through space, not hyperspace, and she's kind of like, because obviously like these kids have never been off of their home planet before, so they're just very excited to, like, Rain is like obviously like a little child, like when you leave your hometown for the first time and you see all these new things, it's it's very interesting that like they decided to like give her that, and it's kind of nice that they put that little detail in, that she's basically like a little, like, she's never been anywhere, she's a nobody, more or less.
All right, yeah, this is all, it's if we hadn't just seen what we saw in that first scene, we might think this is a fun, adventure, coming of age story.
Yeah, definitely. If the comic would have opened with them instead of Darth Bane killing children, you would definitely have a different sense. But that definitely starts it off saying that, this is not going to be a happy story, because as we go on, as they get to Ruusan, and they're flying through this nice idyllic landscape, like there's forests and like really pretty mountains and clouds, they get shot at by some Sith fighters, and the brother and sister, who are like super happy to be there, they get literally just blown up.
Yeah, blown out of the side of the ship, pretty much.
Yeah, like they're literally like, there's a panel where they're sitting there and they're like super happy. Next panel, laser hits them and they're just gone. The next panel, and then this causes Rain to freak out, and she unbuckles her safety belt, which is never a good idea, and she falls out and is presumed dead.
Yep.
So as we go on, and then some Republic fighters end up coming through, some Jedi speeder bikes, it looks like in the comic, and
oh my god.
Yeah,
I just noticed that the speeders kind of look like horses.
Yeah, it's
they
a
look
little
like seahorses almost.
Yeah,
and then the Sith buzzards,
they have like the World War II like fighter stuff on the nose.
Yeah, their wings literally look like World War I airplanes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very weird kind of mix, and it only gets weirder later when we see Farfalla's ship. But they are saved, and then we cut over to Darth Bane again, who is approaching this man, and the man just basically exposits very bluntly that, yeah, you're poisoned, and, you know, I could cure you, but I'm not going to. And he mentions that he's not afraid to die, and sticks his hand into a boiling pot of soup, which is kind of gross, because doesn't he plan on eating that?
No, he just keeps that pot of soup there boiling all the time. So if anyone shows up, he can just stick his hand in there and just show them.
Yeah. And then Bane proceeds to then stomp on his floorboard and force levitate out his daughter, who he was obviously hiding there, so something like this wouldn't happen. And he hovers her over the boiling soup until he agrees to heal him.
Yeah, so the healer could sense that Bane was poisoned, but he could not sense that Bane was a Sith, or I guess he could. And so he should have known Sith could sense people through like walls and stuff.
Yeah. And yeah, Bane is still really splotchy and gross looking. He kind of looks Neanderthalic, like his brow is like massive and he's got like a lantern jaw. He's I guess they kind of did end up picking that description up later of him being bald, and he's kind of like a hulking guy. Like obviously he towers over like the healer, and
yeah.
So they ended up taking that and kind of running with it later. And that ends up being the end of issue 1. All right, and then issue 2 opens up with a very nice shot of some bouncers flying over. Again, like Rusan is shown at this point to be like a very beautiful, like kind of lush world. Like it's got a lot of mountains and a lot of like huge forest, as we've seen, and obviously Tomcat and Bug are going through the forest with the Jedi tour, and they end up noticing about the bouncers, and they we kind of get a little introduction to them, that they they can, Tour says that some say they can dream of the future, and that they can give people like thoughts of comfort and stuff. And Tomcat is like rearing to fight, like he's ready to go fight, like he thinks he's there to fight. And we kind of get that thing where like Tomcat, and Darvit is his actual name, thinks that he's ready, when again, like obviously like he is a child and he should be listening to Tour because Darvit's a child.
Right, he's very young and headstrong. He's not afraid of death at all. He's just ready to go for it.
Yeah, and he ends up kind of bringing up that Tor wouldn't even let them go and look for rain, and Tor has a very good, very realistic point that your cousin fell from half a kilometer up. She's dead, just as you would be if I took you into battle. And then they end up moving out. And then we get
a pretty good line there. It's
it's
superness.
Yeah, I kind of do like this. I guess it's not really a take on the Jedi like as a whole, as opposed to like this just being the Jedi of that era, where like, yeah, like they're a military force, like they're there to fight against the Sith. And so like he's very realistic about it. He's like, yeah, like if I brought you into a battle, you would die. Your cousin died because she fell from half a kilometer up. Like he's very like no nonsense, no BS or anything. He's not like Yoda trying to be like nice or anything.
Oh no, certainly not. He's not the, doting, sweet old mentor.
Yeah, which I think kind of does, in the short time that we're acquainted with this character until, spoiler alert, he dies, he does show like a very kind of different mentor, like more of like a hard ass, as opposed to like an Obi-Wan or as like an old Ben Kenobi type of character.
Like a Yoda. Hello?
Yeah, no, he's like he's not like he's not like a Ben Kenobi character that's like very like soft spoken and very like kind of sweet old man. Like he's a grumpy dude who's probably seen like decades of combat against the Sith.
Right, and I just kind of wanted to, I guess, talk about this for a second. Do they ever like explain why the Sith in this era, or not the Sith, the Jedi in this era are like so fervently like fighting against the Sith?
I don't think they do in this. I know obviously they touch on it in like the Bane novels, but I mean it's if you're looking at it from like you've never read this before, basically what I would imagine like their whole point is that the Sith are the bad guys and there's a lot of them and there's a lot of Jedi, so would kind of be my guess on why they had them fighting.
Yeah, I guess there's so many Sith, the Jedi do have to just kind of just go in open battle against them.
Yeah, like that's the reason they have to like have this entire army of light. And then speaking of Sith, we then transition to Darth Bane lands on Ruusan, and we get a little glimpse of the bouncers doing what Tor said they could do, and they're like hovering over this guy who's dying, and they're like telepathically saying like nice things like calm, don't be afraid, peace, calm. And then the guy wakes up and he says, "Oh, Darth Bane, I thought you were dead. You missed the fight. It was splendid. I'm not sorry to perish in such a battle." And then Bane, he said, "Splendid." And then he does like a big evil, like cackling laugh over like all these, there's like corpses strewn about. And he says, "To perish in any battle is a bleak thing to do. Splendor is for the living. This idiot wastefulness, whose idea was it?" And then the dying Sith said that it was Khan that led them into battle, and Bane says, "Well, Khan calls himself a lord." And then I really like this thing that Bane does because it kind of the next thing he does, which is the dying Sith says that, "Oh, I'll die if you leave me here. Help me, one lord to another." And then Bane replies, "One lord to another." And then he, curb stomps him while saying, "Is everyone a lord now?" Yeah, Florch. And no, I like that because it's a very good way of them. It's a very good way that they conveyed Bane's like contempt for like Khan and the Brotherhood without him just like outright being like because in that line, like instead of having like his movie villain one-liner, he could have just said, "No, I'm not going to help you because I hate Lord Khan," and then squishes his head. Like, no, like it's a very not necessarily subtle, but a lot less obvious way of showing that showing this contempt. It's like
it certainly does more with less character-wise.
Yeah, like it's as little character as Bane has in this comic. Like it's a good character moment, as well as just being like
certainly.
as well as just being like a good like a good bad guy moment. Like and we'll probably mention more of them later on. But Bane has a ton of like movie villain one-liners in this comic.
Oh yeah, he's as bad as an 80s movie character.
Yeah, like he wouldn't be out of place like fighting Arnie in some kind of like 80s movie. And but then we cut from that over to the group traveling through the forest, Torbug and Darvit, and they are ambushed by minions of the Sith who appear to be kind of just like generic non-humans. We don't really, besides like the main Sith cast, we don't really get a lot of classic Star Wars aliens. Like it's kind of just more generic. Oh, these aren't humans.
Yeah, it certainly goes more for style, and they're not really trying to like reference Star Wars aliens a lot in here. I don't think. Yeah, you're right. I don't think there is like a single classic Star Wars alien in here.
Yeah, not in this group. Obviously, and really off the top of my head, the only one I
would
think
say in most of the comic, honestly.
Yeah, because I think the only one that ends up showing up later is Kopej.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, one Twi'lek.
Yeah. And then I think there might be some more later. But anyways, our trio of heroes ends up fighting them off, and
I was just gonna mention at the beginning here, the first attack is a rock thrown at the Jedi Master dude. and he uses like his stick to like block it. And everyone has like one dude has like a just like a classic mace.
Oh
They
yeah,
have
like
like
their weapons. Yeah.
scimitars, and
Yeah.
they just look like regular melee weapons.
Well, because actually you can see on the bottom of that one page, the rock came from a sling. Like there's a dude who has a sling.
Oh. Yeah, I can see that now. Yeah. And you can see him like
Yeah, he's like
he's
twirling
like
it.
yeah, twirling it. He's like getting it ready for the
Yeah.
Wow. This dude
So
in the
then-
back has like an axe. Oh my god.
Yeah, like there's two dudes with just like swords. There's a guy with like a scimitar on his back. Yeah. There's a dude with a battle axe. So again, like a very like medieval aesthetic compared to like the Star Wars we know. But then we have a nice little action scene where they end up fighting them off, and we end up getting this kind of scene where Darvit asks Tor why he's not using his lightsaber, and Tor says, "Well, the staff reaches further. Besides, I don't like my lightsaber." And then which kind of doesn't make sense, because if Tor is like in this war zone, why wouldn't you be using your laser sword that can cut through anything when you're fighting these like no-name minions?
No, we need suspense, and we need stakes, because if he had a lightsaber, he'd just murder all these guys with their regular melee weapons.
Yeah. But Tor does have a good point where he says, "I won't use it unless it's necessary. A lightsaber doesn't make you a Jedi. Many a knight uses it to intimidate." So he kind of has like a little point where, yeah, it's not necessary that he uses his lightsaber to kill these, random no-name minions. But again, it doesn't make a lot of sense because,
I guess he sees the act of igniting a lightsaber as hostile, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, but anyways, Darvit ends up killing a Sith minion that was assaulting him, and after they've kind of won the fight, he realizes, "Oh no, I killed a girl."
She was kind of hot. That sucks, man.
Yeah, no, and and Tor just very matter of fact says, "Yeah, she was. There's no telling who will end up on the dark side."
That's right. The dark side is gender neutral.
Yeah, and then he wipes off Darvit's little dagger, and then says that they've got to run out and get out of there. Which then we get to cut over to the main Sith cast, which are basically the only important Sith characters that we really run into besides Bane. And it's announced that Khan is coming in and that everyone is supposed to rise, and Khan asks Kopej if he's too fat to rise, because Kopej is immense.
Yeah, he is a wide Twi'lek.
Yeah. And but he brings up that they're supposed to be equals in the Brotherhood of Darkness, and Khan says, "Indeed. Please remain seated, all of you. No need to rise." And then Githany, who is probably the second most important Sith character, gives Khan this weird, it's like a parchment map, but then when he unrolls it, it has like little holographic shapes that obviously are supposed to represent the Sith and Jedi forces.
Yeah, it's like a holographic paper map, I guess. It's very easy to miss,
Yeah. And then another interesting thing I think I would mention about the Sith in here is, obviously, like, their main color theme is black, but I think it's very interesting that, like, all of the Sith are very, like, in addition to, like, their, like, black battle armor, a lot of them have on, like, gold. Like, Khan's armor has, like, golden accents, and then when you can see the close-up of his hand next to the map, he has, like, 2 golden rings on his fingers. Githany has, like, big golden earrings. Kopej on his Leku has gold bands, and you can see a lot of the other Sith, like, one of them has, like, gold-looking bracers, and so the Sith also, like, it's another way that they're kind of distinguished from the Jedi in that they're kind of lavish in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not super apparent. It's kind of I think it's kind of drowned out in all the black,
Yeah.
but yeah, they got their gold in there. They got rings. I think could have done it more, but the one super like jewelry wearing Sith at this point is dead, so not much. You can't really be flashing around his jewelry there.
Yep, exactly. And then Darth Bane ends up barging in as they're talking about their battle plans. And, well, they end up kind of just matter-of-factly, like, saying, like, Bane just says to Khan that, how did you ever get the guts to poison me? Which I think is, like, a very kind of blunt expository way to, like, bring it about, I guess. Which, again, we had no context for why Bane was poisoned in the first place, and they kind of just dump it on us here.
Yeah, it's all written in a way that's like, kind of just giving exposition as needed, so the audience can kind of, or the reader can kind of follow along. um I'm not a huge fan of it in the comic because it kind of, I think it leaves a little bit to be desired with the story and the way the story is told. Kind of just, it's almost like the comic just kind of just brings us just random scenes that are happening, throughout the world of this, of this comic, and it's not always, super important stuff.
Yeah. But the one thing that I do like from this kind of little expository scene is after Bane barges in and takes a seat, Khan goes back to explaining his plans, and he's saying, "Oh, like I was saying, our air forces will deploy on our left wing, flanking." And Bane just says, "Bah!" and slams his hand down. And he says, "Deploying air forces, flanking armies. You're thinking like a dirt general, not a Sith Lord." And he then says, "Look at this map and think like a Sith. Don't just fight in the forest, destroy the forest." So, again, showing that Bane is a lot more ruthless, and he has a different method of thinking as opposed to the rest of them. Because, like he kind of says, they're thinking like kind of just a normal army, when obviously they're an army being led by Sith Lords.
Right, they have Sith powers.
Yeah, and he's kind of just, and Khan is just thinking, oh, well, I'll deploy my air forces on the left and blah, 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 blah. Like, very just normal military strategy. And then Bane comes in and kind of poo-poos it and says, no. And then obviously we don't get what happens, because then we cut over again to Tour and the two children, and they come across a, like, rickety Indiana Jones, like, rope bridge. And as they're getting across it, the Sith kind of come back on the one side, and Tour gets shot by an arrow, and he decides that he'll hold him off and have the valiant last stand. He ignites his lightsaber, and then as the children get across, he pulls a Gandalf, and he destroys the bridge, and the Sith all plummet to their deaths, but so does he.
Yeah, it's a very, very serious scene. Like super, super edgy and all that. They're like being chased by all these, assorted bad guys and villain looking guys. And he just does the old, sacrifice to get these much needed kids to the army. The kid, he throws his life away for just to get these little kids to the battlefield so they can probably die.
Yeah. And then he ends up falling, and Bug is like, well, let's get out of here. There's no point in staying here. And Darvit, this is where he becomes an edgy little shitlord. He says, no, I want his lightsaber, which for some reason is still lit, and I've never understood that, the rules of when lightsabers stay lit and when they go out.
Yeah, and it perfectly landed on a rock, and it's kind of just like leaning, it's just like going sideways off this cliff, so it's not like stabbing through the rock.
Yeah, and then we cut back to Bane. He is approached by Githany, who is bringing him some soup, and Bane, again, kind of without any context, says, well, poison again. And, yeah, they end up going through that. the little poisoning scheme again, and we find out that, it was actually Githany who poisoned him, and that Khan ordered it. But then we get into the good stuff, where Bane is explaining that the dark side is spread too thin. They have too many Dark Lords, and even the strongest wine cannot be felt in an ocean of weak water. For the dark side to be strong again, it should be contained in one vessel, one Lord. And Githany says, or two, which Bane agrees with. And then Githany just says, well, we'll see to that after we destroy the Jedi. And then, or is there anything you wanted to say about like that little scene? Because obviously that kind of gives more insight onto Bane's reasoning as to why the Brotherhood has to go.
No, just like at the end there, I get maybe a little bit of foreshadowing when she's like, "We shall see to that after we have destroyed the Jedi," and he's like, "Yes," and then in the next panel, after we've done that, kind of like he's like, "All right, like first things first, destroy the," and maybe he could be, you could say he's coming up with his plan to kill the Sith at that time.
Well, I think, and obviously this is jumping forward to the novels, but doesn't Bane, when he arrives on Ruusan, isn't his plan already to get Khan to use the thought bomb?
No, not when he first goes there. I don't think he went to Ruusan with a plan necessarily.
Well, because
I think maybe his plan was to like take over the army.
Well,
or
no,
something.
because I'm pretty sure that he sent like the idea of the thought bomb before he got there. Maybe, I don't know. For some reason, I remember it happening.
He sends it later. He sends it very much later, I think.
I don't know, but no. So this Bane sounds like he's formulating his plans kind of on the go, and then we end up cutting back to Daravit, who's scaled down the cavern. Oh gosh, what would that be? Like the thing between the bridge.
Dry rock.
Yeah.
Bed?
Anyways, yeah. He climbs down the rocks, gets Tor's lightsaber, which is still on, and Tor's like dying words are, "Other man's saber, not good." And then Daravit, again, this is where he like becomes a edgelord for kind of the rest of the comic. He says no, or because Bug asks him, "Oh, is Tor down there?" And Daravit says, "No one's there," as he's turning off the lightsaber, and then Tor is kind of just like babbling, "Oh, careful, Tomcat, don't," and then he dies.
It would have been so much more edgy if he just like taken the lightsaber, just like stabbed him, just be like, "Shut up, old man," or something like that, and then did the whole thing like, "No, there's no one here."
Yeah. But no, Daravit then climbs back up, and so now Bug's mad because they have to walk through the woods in the dark, and then some more Sith show up. And I think this is where we get a couple more of the Star Wars species that you can recognize. There's a Duros in there, and what appears to be, I think, an Ishitib as well. So I think at least we get there a couple more, and then the dude up front is like a blue guy. But again, they're all just like armed with like spears and swords. So
the Duros has like some kind of like head where he's like wielding like a spear, or is that a...
Yeah, like some kind of like jagged, edgy spear with like extra points coming off it. More or less all you need to know is that they're just like generic melee weapons again. Again, kind of showing like the time period that this comic is trying to emulate. And then we get Daravit, who's ready to defend his cousin, and he says, "Oh, stand behind me. This is a job for a Jedi." In which case, right after he says that, ironically, the Jedi show up. We get Keel Charney, who shows up to save the day, and he says, "Oh, I see you wield Tor's lightsaber. What happened to him?" And then that's kind of it. So, and I think this right here, when the Jedi show up, is the first and only instant I think that we see like regular people using blasters, because obviously like they're shot in the back with blasters, and then there's a couple guys who are like standing behind Keel Charney, and they're holding blaster rifles. So I think that's the only time we ever see blasters that aren't on like starships or speeders in this whole comic.
Yeah, even though they're the guys that are the guy that's holding the saber, he's just kind of no saber. The blaster is kind of just dressed like the Jedi are with like armor, and he got like a colored cape and stuff.
Yeah. So very
Oh,
interesting that this
eye
is
out
the
for the blasters. We'll do a blaster count.
yeah. So that's I think the only instance we see blasters, and then we cut over to Rain, who we find out has been saved by one of the bouncers, and they're kind of talking about how oh, we're having bad dreams about her, and that oh, you should leave her, Law, who we are eventually going to find out is Rain's bouncer friend. So that is the end of issue 2. And then jumping ahead to issue 3 after that, we open up with, again, it's kind of like whenever we see the Jedi, like, the imagery behind them is always, like, it's very beautiful, like, there's lots of trees, lots of grass, and it's all very, like, vibrant and very, like, full of life, and we get Hoth asking Pernicar, why did you become a Jedi? And we get kind of this, it sounds like a Dungeons and Dragons backstory you would make for your character, where Pernicar's father was a scribe, and he had a bunch of sons because he was a scribe, and he was the only person that could read or write in his like hometown, and he wanted to be a scribe, but then he got sent away to the Jedi, and he hated him for him, and then he realized when he was an adult that like, oh, being a scribe, he wouldn't have been able to feed all his kids, and so he has like this very humble kind of origin story, I guess. And then he asks, "Oh, what was yours, Lord Hoth?" And Hoth has like this epic, grand. I had a dream that I would single-handedly defeat the dark side, and I would make a difference in the galaxy. But the galaxy has changed me. Either we win this war, or the Sith will. And what then will change? Do you think? Do you think ill of me now? And Pernicar says, "No, I don't." And he says that he'll fight like a Jedi, and that Hoth is the best Jedi he's ever met. And then, again, kind of indicative of the time period that this comic is trying to emulate, Hoth says, "Send out the Bugle Boy, it's time."
I never noticed that it's just an actual bugle. Wow.
Yeah, it's just a little kid blowing a trumpet. And then they're all roused by this, and this wakes up Daravit, and
He looks mad.
yeah, he's grumpy because he says, "Look at them, the army of light, the army of mud, more like. How do they expect to fight the Sith and win? They have no business calling themselves like Jedi. They're nothing, just like Tor was nothing." And yeah, he's kind of doing that thing where he had the Jedi built up in his head to be like, or like the Jedi army, I guess, more or less, to be like built up in his head as like, a big, like, perfect army that's always going to win. But then when he meets up with them, it's like ordinary people, like they're eating out of like clay bowls, sleeping in the mud, and
Yeah, the clash between his built up fantasy that he had about the Jedi and this harsh reality of war it's a little too much for him. He's not having it.
yeah. And then we end up, I really like this scene where like this guy from like the cook wagon comes up to Tomcat and Bug, and he says, "Oh, you've been assigned to the kitchen, push the wagon with the others." And then Darvik gets mad. "What do you mean, push the wagon?" And he says, "I don't push wagons, I am a Jedi." And then the cook, who is like this huge, like, yolked dude, like twice Darvik's like height, and like 4 times his size, he says, "Yeah, okay, so you're a Jedi." And Darvit says, "Yeah, I'm here to fight, not wash dishes." Yeah, and then he's challenged. He says, "Oh, well, fight me then." And Darvit charges in with a lightsaber, and the cook smacks it out of his hand with his ladle. And then this big, like, Hercules-looking dude punches a child, like, in the stomach, and it, like, lifts him off the ground and, like, knocks the wind out of him, and he drops his lightsaber, and then all the other kids are, like, they start playing, like, keep away with his lightsaber, and Darvit is, like, beside himself, like, he's crying, and he's his cousin ends up getting it, and his cousin just says, "It's your lightsaber. Just stop making a fool of yourself." And then he says, "Oh, don't tell me what to do."
Yeah, this whole sequence, it's certainly enjoyable, but it kind of ruins Dare of it for me, you know.
Well, I think it works very well because again, it shows that Darvit is like he's a child. Like I'm pretty sure like we all had a moment like that where like we were like a pissy 12-year-old and like our older cousin or something, our older cousins were like playing keep away, or kids on like recess were playing keep away, and then you just get flustered, you get pressed, and it's like he's kind of like breaking down because he's a pissy 12-year-old. Like we've all been there. Like something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's kind of acting out. He's mad. He lost his cousin and all that. Now he's got like he gets to the the front, and all this he went through: Tor dying, his cousin dying, those other two random kids dying. His whole little adventure to get here, and he's just here to push the kitchen wagon.
Yeah.
So you definitely understand where he's coming from, but so doesn't make him look too good.
Yeah, but again, that's
kind of the point, right?
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be the point, and then he kind of goes and sulks off, and Bug agrees to push the wagon, and then we go over to Rain and Law, and they're kind of just flying through the forest, having a little discussion about. Law kind of talks about how he's had a bad death dream about the forest, and Rain then kind of ends up trying to use the Force to move some rocks, and then Law kind of just says, "Oh no, Rain's tired, Rain's sleep." We kind of get these like interjected, and they're basically all the same thing, of how like they kind of serve as like a little bit of like short-term foreshadowing. Like they kind of foreshadow what's going to happen next. Like Law the bouncer is talking about how I had a bad death dream about the forest, and then
they were in that ending scene of, I think it was issue 2.
Yep.
Right when all the bouncers are like around Rain and Law, they're like saying like the girl is bad girl, Law, don't all this little talk. It's kind of easy to miss, but they're kind of, there's a little bit of foreshadowing there with what's going to happen, with Rain and Law.
Yeah. And then, it does kind of show that, that Rain is like attached to Law, which obviously like she's a little girl and Law had like saved her life. So like obviously she's very attached, and it kind of helps that the bouncers are like kind of the way that they're drawn and designed are to be like these like big, cute, fluffy green flying things.
Yeah, they're definitely unique looking. In the books, because I read the books first, they don't really illustrate they don't really illustrate how well how big the freaking bouncers are. They're like the size of like a person. I mean, they say in the book they're like 1 meter wide, but who knows how wide a meter is?
Well, anyone outside the States.
Or a few meters.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
But no, you're right. Like it's big enough to where like this, 8-9-year-old child can like lie on his back and sleep while he flies around. So then we cut back to battle, and it looks like the Republic forces are using a mortar to shoot at the Sith. And then we get General.
Some guy's got his fingers in his ears.
Yeah, he's got his fingers in his ears, plugging them, and yeah. But then as all this
we have blasters. We got blasters in the background here.
Yeah, people are carrying blasters, and we have Darvit. He's sulking up on a rock, watching like these regular people doing things, and he says, "Oh, they're dirt rats. There's not a Jedi worthy of a song among them." Again, kind of building up that like this isn't what Darvit thought when he came to this planet.
Yeah, apparently the Jedi have very much been built up through song in this time period.
Yeah, it's definitely song could obviously refer to, obviously, like, as songs, I guess they could. That would make sense. Like, there's obviously, like, folk songs, like, in our own time about, historical figures and such. And it could also just mean, like, stories and everything. And then
Or
we
he
have...
could be speaking figuratively, but I feel like with the way this, comic is, it's probably literally,
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if, like, in this, like, setting, in, like, the way they have this drawn, if, like, there were people sitting in a bar somewhere on Coruscant and they're singing, like, the Jedi song about Lord Hoth or about, the war or whatever. So it definitely wouldn't surprise me if that was, like, actually a thing, that they meant to be, like, a literal thing. Like, people are telling these stories, like
there's like a Bith Bard somewhere playing his like electronic lute or something.
Yeah. And then we get General Charney. He shows up, and in the worst, like, way possible, justifies this child going to battle with him on the back of his speeder. He says, "Oh, sure, Tor thought you were worthy of his lightsaber. That's guarantee enough for me. Hop on." And they literally just, like, he brings this child into battle because he has a lightsaber.
Right? He's like, "Oh, you have Tor's lightsaber? Nothing to read into there."
Yeah, good enough for me. But they end up arriving at the front, and they're looking through some electro binoculars, and it looks like the Sith are approaching, and we get a little bit more. This is where we get, General Charney's feelings about Valentine Farfalla, and or not him, but the guy next to him. It would, I guess, kind of be indicative of how other, like, soldiers in the Army of Light would feel about him. And the man comments that Valentine Farfalla is a useless dandy, which sounds like something like my great-grandpa would say.
I think here it's Tomcat saying that.
Oh, Tomcat's saying that. Oh, okay.
He's kind of like, there's like an ellipses there, so he's kind of like hesitating to say it.
Okay, I thought it was the dude who was laying next to Charney saying that.
No, I think it's either Keel or the mustache dude who's saying you've heard that around campfires. And he sees Tom.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because then Charney. Well, it couldn't be Charney who obviously says that he's useless dandy, because Charney says that Valentine's a fine Jedi, and and you shouldn't believe everything you hear. And then
the way the comic plays out, Tomcat's like, "Valentine, Lord Farfalla," and then the next thing he's like, "But isn't he a useless dandy?" And then he's like,
okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Around the campfires, huh, Tom?
Yeah, and then so.
Mind if I call you Tom?
Yeah, and then we get next. They give Duravit the electro binoculars, and he's looking through, and the Sith are charging. It's like there's 3 guys right up at the front with lightsabers. They're charging in just like on foot, like a medieval battle, like something out of Lord of the Rings.
I love the little letters put on there. I don't know what the technical term for that is in a comic. When it's like just like yelling, like, and it's like yeah, it's like a bunch of I's, A's, yeah, and they just put that, like they're just like screaming and charging.
Yeah, and then incoherently screaming, yeah, and then Darvid, like, he's super freaked out. He's like, "Oh my God, the Sith are coming!" And Charney, he's like, obviously, like, very experienced general, because he's like calm and cool, and he's like, "Yeah, they're coming. Get ready." And then we have this dude who's like kneeling with like his hands folded, like he's like saying like a little prayer thing, and he says, "Our hearts are free from anger. Our cause we know is just. We kill not for joy or hatred. We fight because we must." And then Daravit like kisses his lightsaber hilt and says, "Oh, we fight because we must."
Yeah, a little cringy there.
Yeah, it's a little.
The little line that even rhymes.
Yeah, it's, well, again, like, they're kind of going for that thing of like, oh, like, they in the Middle Ages they would like pray before their battles, so why wouldn't these guys?
Yeah, this is like this is like totally the aesthetic like the High Republic is gonna go for,
Yeah.
Jedi saying little creeds to their lightsabers before battle and stuff,
Yeah, I have no idea.
They want.
And then the next page we get the the glorious battle spread, and there's like a Sith in like the middle of the battle who's just like striking a pose. There's like a dude in the bottom right corner who has his like arm chopped off. There's a dude who's like on the ground, he's like covering his eye, and there's like blood dripping off his face. So, and another blaster. We have another blaster sighting confirmed. And like
yeah. It's just this like dude who's just like he's like yelling, "Hey, you guys! I found a blaster."
Don't know how to use it though.
How do you use these things? Where's my bow and arrow?
And actually, looking at this, I found another Twi'lek and a Deveronian there as well.
Yeah, the Deveronian looks cool.
Yeah, he's got like the eyeshadows, kind of like Bane would end up having later in his illustrations.
Yeah. And there's even there's like a regular ball dude. He just kind of looks like a Maul type.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. But then we go to the next page, and Daravit is fighting some scrub who has a spear, and he whoops his ass. He like chops his spear in half and then kills him, and then he jumps into battle and he kills another guy, and he kisses his lightsaber in the middle of battle. Oh, we kill because it's just.
Yeah, he's just straight murking these dudes.
Yeah, he's like a 12-year-old kid is like jumping around and he's killing. Sorry, I interrupted myself because there's another sighting of a normal alien. There's a Quarren up in the upper left-hand panel. So I guess there were more than we thought. You just got to look for them. But then we get Darvid is confronted with a dude who looks very similar to how Darth Krayt is eventually drawn, like with his armor and his helmet. He looks very similar to Darth Bane, I feel like, or Darth Krayt, excuse me.
Yeah, he's got like the spiky armor. He's wearing like a skull mask. He's black. Yeah, big black armor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He kind of looks like a dinosaur almost.
Yeah, like kind of like a dinosaur with the way his like. And again, you don't know if he's human or anything, but he has like a huge jaw. And Darvit's like freaked out. He says, "Oh, a Dark Lord," and he dispatches him easily by cutting his legs off and then finishing him off. And then he's all like, he's hyped. He's like, "Oh, a Dark Lord! I killed a Dark Lord!" And then Charney's like right-hand man. He says, "Oh, none I've ever seen." And then he says, then Charney basically exposits that, "Oh, that wasn't a real Dark Lord." And then the right-hand mustachioed man says, "Oh, that's what was amiss. There were no Dark Lords in this battle. Thousands of minions, but not one real Lord. So where are they? And what are they up to?" And then we cut over to the real Dark Lords who are there, and they're basically just doing the ritual about how basically they're all just like joining together as one, and they basically just say, Bane is like, they're kind of channeling it through Bane, and he says, "Do you feel invincible, invulnerable, immortal? Are you ready to kill a world?" And then this is where we end with issue 3 with Law and Rain. They wake up, and it kind of ends very ominously. This issue does. Law says, "Bad dreams, Rain, death dreams," and then that is where we end issue 3. And then that brings us into issue 4, which opens up with a huge wall of fire, like coming through the forest. It engulfs some bouncers. And then we get to a battlefield where a Jedi is fighting a Sith minion, and they get consumed by the wall of fire, and it like blows through. And then, very sadly, on the bottom of one of the page, we get the dead Bugle Boy who we saw in the last issue.
Oh no, I never noticed that. There's like, damn, there's like people like freaking like buried underneath the dirt and everything. Holy crap!
Yeah, and then
oh my god, there's like a wagon with wooden wheels. Awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, we had that earlier because that was the Darvit was supposed to help push the lunch wagon.
Oh yeah, that's right. No hover carriage for us.
No, God no. But then we cut over to Bane, who is mad because Khan stopped the ritual, and he says, "Oh well, we're just gonna go finish the Jedi." And Bane says, "Yeah, we could have crushed them forever if we had kept going." And then even Githany joins in, and she says, "Oh, come on, Bane, grab a speeder, let's kill some Jedi." And then Bane, again, he's like trying to keep reiterating, like, we need to work as one, like we need to work through the dark side. And then Githany, like, she's into the whole, like, yeah, where's the joy in that? I want to see Jedi blood. And then they hop on their speeders and take off. Everyone, except for Kopesh, it's not Khan that breaks it in this. Khan breaks it in the novel. Here, it's like they collectively, like, broke the circle because they felt like Bane's teeth were on their throats and that he was going to, like, suck them dry of their power. And then Bane, again, he keeps mentioning, we did that. What we did was, like, it was unity. Like, we did it for the dark side, not myself. And then Kopej, as he's leaving, he says, well, we know you didn't do it for us. And then Bane, as he's flying away, he says, fools, blind fools. Khan has the army he deserves.
Yeah. So yeah, it kind of seems like the Sith kind of just left to go fight the Jedi for fun. But Kopesh kind of implies that it was, more like they were just scared of Bane's immense power.
Yeah, well, not really of Bane's power, more of that, like, I guess kind of that they were afraid of his power, but more that, like, well, because I think the Sith of this era are definitely more in it, like, for themselves and, like, their own glory, as opposed to, like,
always?
Well, this era specifically,
even more selfish.
Yeah, they're, like, extra selfish because, like Bane said, like, they had the chance to destroy the Jedi on Ruusan, like, right there, but they didn't because they wanted to go in and kill them, like, person to person.
Like, nah, speeders go brr.
Yeah, exactly. And but then we cut over to Daravit, General Charney, and his right-hand man, whose name is Rajan. I think this is, like, the first time we ever get his name. So, Charney asks Daravit to help because Rajan's trapped under a fallen over tree, and Daravit then starts freaking out because he can't find his lightsaber, and he is saying, "Oh, I know the songs. It was never like this. One Jedi is worth a legion of enemies, and if he dies to save a planet. He doesn't die choking on ash. He doesn't. Why would anyone become a Jedi if it means dying like this?"
Oh, yeah, and then Keel replies, he will not die, Tom, and nobody can live in a song.
Yeah, so, and again, it kind of shows that, like, Charney, he knows that, like, this is a war. It's not like, like we had talked about, that they talked about in the previous issue, like, it's not a tavern song. Like, nobody actually lives those. And then he says, stars know I would not be here if I were any good at anything else. And then, he says, oh, help the wounded. And Daravit says, oh, but this is an enemy. And there's, like, a Sith who's, like, down on the ground. He pulls out a knife, which then triggers Daravit and sends him into, like, instant kill mode.
Like, he's like, you must die.
Yeah, and then Charney says, he's like, oh, he's just afraid, he's hurt, and his lords have abandoned him. Watch out! And then, like, one of the Sith speeders comes flying in and blows up their own person, and of course Daravit doesn't die, because again, he's the protagonist.
Yeah, it blows the dude to smithereens. He's just turned into a ball of fire. And that is it.
Yeah, and then, so obviously the Sith are coming in, and Charney tells everyone to get down, and this is where Daravit freaks out, because he loses his lightsaber, and he's, like, on his hands and knees. He's, like, wild-eyed. He's, like, covered in dirt and soot, and he's freaking out. He's like, oh, my lightsaber, where's my lightsaber? And then, we get this good thing where, like, another Jedi is telling Daravit, he's like, hey, snap out of it. And then Charney says, oh, let him be. We can't hide. We have no defense. The next attack will wipe us out. And then we kind of get this cool, and then Khan and Githany are talking, and she says, oh, Githany says, oh, I'm just going with Charney. I'll kill him this time. And then the Jedi says to Charney, oh, you can't deflect that blast with the lightsaber. And he says, no. And then we get this cool dialogue, this, like, dual dialogue between Githany and Charney where, they're both saying, oh, and Charney's still going to try and block this. But then, luck of the draw, the Sith speeders start getting blown up, and Farfalla shows up in his boat, his literal boat.
It's Deus Ex Farfalla in his sky ship that has a giant unicorn for a
prow.
or a prow thingy.
Yeah, and
And
then
it has like a fake metal sail. It's got like it has flags from minarets on the top of it.
Yep, and then at the bottom of the ship, which is all gold, it has starship engines. It is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think they mention that in the novels. They don't really, or they do describe that it's like meant to be modeled after like ancient like water boats, and everyone in the novel just like shit talks it. They're like, that's so stupid, blah blah blah, and it is. It's really dumb, but
I don't remember that being mentioned, honestly, but in the comic, it's so close to the ground, it's crazy.
Yeah, and yeah, like the bottom fin off of one of the engines is like literally like 30 feet off the ground. And then we get introduced this time by in person to Valentine Farfalla, who is a satyr. So he's got two goat legs, and then from the waist up he's a human but with pointy ears.
Yeah, and he just has tons of other goat people with him.
Yeah, he's got his whole goat squad, and yeah, he walks up and he's straight up looks like a D&D character. Like he's got a gold breastplate, he's got like the frilly shoulders, he's wearing like a what are they called on his head? A tiara with like a gem in the middle of it. A what?
A circlet?
Oh, I suppose, yeah, circlet. Well, I guess, isn't it still a tiara though? I don't know.
It's a tiara if it has like a little crown on it, I think.
Oh, okay. I don't know the difference. But anyways, yeah, he's got like a circlet with like a gem in it. And then they kind of get like a silly little joke in, because like the dude who greets Farfalla is like, oh, what happened to your eye? And the guy replies, oh, Sith happened, my lord. Which,
Sith happens.
I don't know if that's supposed to be a play on like, oh, shit happens. Or what. But
I say yes.
Yeah, it's like a little, not necessarily fourth wall breaking, but like, he almost said the S word.
It's the closest we've ever gotten to it in Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, in this they do drop bastards, I think 2 times. So lots.
Yeah, probably Hell's in there somewhere.
No hells, but they do drop bastards 2 times. But regardless, Hoth he's mad. He says, "Oh, what's kept you so long? Did your hooves take too long to polish? Was your tail too tangled?" And then like they like Farfalla points out, he's like, what did I do to deserve this? Like he just arrived with like his ship and saved the day, and Hoth basically just replies that he wasn't here. But I don't know, Hoth just comes across as like an overly hard ass in this scene, because like Farfalla keeps explaining, he's like, I kept my word, I brought 300 Jedi Knights ready to fight.
Yeah, well, I think it's apparent in the next scene when, Hoth, takes off the harp and reveals his dead best friend, basically.
Yeah, I suppose he's kind of like probably...
He's like, you didn't get here in time to stop my friend from dying,
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, Hoth is like, he's distraught because like his right-hand man died.
Oh, yeah, and then he names drops some other Jedis that died.
Yeah, and, well, basically, Farfalla wasn't there, but again, like, Farfalla wasn't there because he was getting reinforcements.
Yeah. And he basically tells Farfalla to, frick off because, frick off with your reinforcements because you were off getting reinforcements.
Yeah, which, again, doesn't make sense because he brought 300 more, but then we get away from that and back to Charney, who is very excited to be alive, but then Githany shows up with her light whip, which I think is the stupidest like lightsaber variation. And basically we get there a little bit of like backstory between like, oh, they used to be lovers, and then
I'm sorry, I was sneezing off mic, but
oh no, you're fine. Yeah,
the lightsaber whip, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it existing. It's just it's so like unpractical and unusable. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm okay with it. There was like that Dark Jedi in the Qui-Gon Obi-Wan comics that used it, and then Lumia, right?
Lumaya, yeah.
Maya.
Yeah, but then Yeah, we get their little backstory, kind of like exposited how, when she started falling to the dark side, and Charney tried to save her from the anger, and then they have like a little fight, and we basically get Githany espousing like the whole like Sith stuff where, you're a slave to your duty and to all the weaklings who crave your protection. What good is the Force if you never use it for yourself? You can't even bring yourself to attack me. And then she ends up cutting off his hand with the her lightsaber whip, her light whip.
Right, yeah, and you see the hand flying off with the lightsaber still in it and ignited.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. That's pretty great.
Yeah, and then I do like the little exchange they have, because he's like, "Oh, Githany," and then Githany interrupts and he says, "Oh, what, General? What clever sentence will you come up with now?" And then Darvit has fully embraced being an edgy asshole, and he's literally comes into panel holding Charney's severed hand and his lightsaber. And he says, "Oh, the Jedi are weak, small people who do not realize the blessings of the Force, its true potential for greatness. The songs were wrong. The Jedi are not the ones to celebrate." And then he fucking just murks Charney.
Or he just cleaves his head in two.
Yeah. And then and then we get a kind of a nice little thing where Darvit kind of embraces the dark side, because Githany, and she says, "Oh, wise choice, Tom, wise." And then, Darvit kind of rejects that, and he says, "Oh, Darvit, that's my real name." And then we get the one Jedi who, for some reason, they leave alive. He, obviously goes back and spreads that Darvit's a traitor, because then in our next scene, we see Bug again, and he's running around, and he's saying, "Oh, has anyone seen Tomcat?" And another kid says, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. He killed General Charney in front of witnesses."
Yeah, I like that line and the way the little kid looks.
Yeah. And then we kind of get a weird thing where the kid, not Bug, he's like, "Oh, he killed him with Charney's own lightsaber torn from his severed hand. What a song that would make." And like, why would he want to be singing about a Jedi who died?
I mean, I guess it's kind of like tragic irony.
I guess.
I don't know. I just thought it's kind of just funny how he just turns so rapidly, in like 1 second. Like the dude gets his hand chopped off, and he's like, "Yeah, you're too weak. You're gonna die." And then, so you don't think maybe Darvit going off with Githany is kind of like a red herring, like, oh, she's gonna be the master and he'll be the apprentice,
No, because the way that it had been like set up, like obviously, and in the episode 1 novel, how they mention that Darth Bane created the rule of 2. I mean, I guess if you're going and reading this, maybe you could think that Darvit would end up being like the big bad guy, I guess, if you hadn't.
Right, if you had like no foreknowledge, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I could definitely see that, maybe. I guess it's kind of hard to like look back without any context, obviously, because we both read what comes after. So
Right. I try and do that though, just to kind of.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Think about different things.
Yeah, that definitely could be. But no, then we cut over to Rain, who is with Law, and I really like this. This is where I think the Rain and Law story starts to become like a lot better, instead of it being just like foreshadowing stuff, because they're standing amidst like this smoldering ruin, and they're on like the only patch of green grass. And I don't know, that's just like a really good visual.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
you can just imagine that she put up some kind of force bubble to stop the whole force storm thing that Bane did.
Yeah, because she's like freaking out, because she's like, "Oh, I've got the force," and then Law's, he's saying, "Oh, Rain has force. Strong force works in Rain, or strong force woke in Rain." And then she's super happy, because she's like, "Oh, I can't wait to tell Tomcat." And then Law looks kind of like sad, and he's like, "Well, Law had Rain dream, Rain Jedi dream, Tomcat Jedi, no, Bug Jedi, no, Rain Dark Jedi, strong Dark Jedi." And then
Rain asks her, like, "You dreamt I would be a Jedi?" And she's like, "Yeah, Tomcat, just no, Bug, no, definitely not."
Yeah. And
heard
then
Dark Jedi. Dun dun dun.
yeah,
I
and then
actually never noticed that before either.
yeah, no, it's really good. Like the stuff between Law, like I said, like this is where like the Rain and Law segments like start to be a lot better instead of like just being used as like foreshadowing. And then again we get this where Rain says, because she's sad because she doesn't want to be a Sith. She says, "But all your dreams come true, don't they? The death of the forest, all of them." And then he says, Law replies with, "Law hopes dark Jedi Rain dream never true." And then Rain again is freaked out and she says, "Oh, if it comes true, what then? Do I die?" And then he says, "Rain not die, Rain alive, strong dark Jedi, Rain alive." And then, she's very sad because she wants to know if Law and Tomcat die, and then that is how we end issue 4. And then that ends up bringing us into 5, and it opens up with a blank black page, and it just says, "Death." And then we find out that the bouncers have gone insane because of the force storm that Bane unleashed. Like, all this death, like, going through and destroying their planet. Like, now instead of, like, going around and being like, "Oh, calm, peace," now they're going around agony, pain, death. And, yeah, we then find out that Lord Hoth has ordered all of the bouncers to basically just be killed, and that Hoth is planning to attack Khan in the caves. So we end up going through, and we see them next. We see Hoth is handing out stuff to like these just random people, like in a line, and then he comes up to Bug, ends up getting up there, and they say, "Oh, my name's Bug," and Hoth replies, "I know that name. You're the brother of that traitor Tomcat." And then, they end up going. Bug ends up explaining, "No, like I want to like avenge him and everything, and like he's here to like fill the hole that Tomcat was supposed to have." And then Hoth again says, "Oh, welcome, Bug," and gives this child a lightsaber. Like, these guys are so irresponsible.
Right. They're handing out lightsabers to everybody else, and they're giving him. I'm sorry, not lightsabers. They're handing out blasters to everybody else and giving him specifically a lightsaber.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And then Bug ends up replying, "Oh, well, my real name is Hardin." And it's mentioned way earlier, I think in the first issue, that the people from this planet don't use their real names because they're afraid of the swamp monster is going to come and get them. So
Right,
it's kind of a big deal that Bug decides to give up his real name.
Yep.
And then we cut over to Daravit, Speak of the Devil, and he's talking with
I think in that context with him saying Hardin, it's more like him, you could say, losing his childlike innocence.
Yeah, like losing his innocence when he gets his like weapon, and he kind of like accepts like his. Yeah, he definitely like accepts his like responsibilities, I guess, as an adult, and he's supposed to be like the Jedi Tomcat was supposed to be. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, he's kind of being set up here as like he's the new protagonist we're supposed to follow.
Yeah, and then like I said, we cut over to Daravit, and he's talking with Githany, and she gives him like a BDSM like leather suit, which I guess like all of us kind of end up wearing in this, and I like the little joke where Daravit, once he puts it on, there's like a stain on it, and he's like, "Oh, what's this, blood?" And Githany just like very matter of factly, she's like, "Well, it's not soup." So then we end up going into the caves with those two, and they run into Kopej, and Githany asks, "Oh, what's the news?" Kopej replies simply with, "Not good." And then Githany asks if, "Oh, are there more Jedi reinforcements coming?" And Kopej just replies with, "Worse. Khan had an idea. The thought bomb." And then, of course, everyone except for Daravit is like, "Oh no, not the thought bomb." And Daravit's just like, "I don't even know what that is." And then Kopej just says, "Yeah, it means that we're all dead."
Right, and again, the comic just kind of throwing the reader, into the scene with like no context for what's going on. You know, um, Hoth is already planning on attacking the caves where Khan is. We're now, what's going on? The thought bomb. When did all this stuff happen?
Yeah, yeah, and we get no explanation of it because we cut over to Rain, who who's trying to kill herself because she doesn't want to be a dark Jedi. And then that's about all we really get from that. And then she ends up levitating herself, which is like a pretty advanced power. And she just like floats herself off from like killing herself.
Right. Yeah. She's like, you know what? Never mind. I'll become a Jedi, and everything will be great. And Law's just like, yes, Rain.
Yeah, and then but then we cut over to some more crazed bouncers hovering around the Jedi defeat, and they're saying defeat, death, pain, despair, and there's a Jedi who's killing them with a bow and arrow, and he goes to shoot at one, and then it turns out to be a harpy lady with a katana on her back that she couldn't grab because she doesn't have hands.
Yeah, and she has giant wings where her hands should be.
Yeah, where her arms should be. Yeah. And then they kind of go back and forth about how Farfalla has a message for Hoth, where he's like apologizing for his tardiness, and then Hoth basically like reciprocates it, and he says, "Oh, he's not the only one to blame. Take this message back to him that we'll take his reinforcements." Then we cut back to Darvit in the caves, where we get an explanation of the thought bomb, and Kopej basically explains that it's an old Sith skill, and the Force can be extracted and mentally bound into a shape primed for explosion, and if the thought bomb were to explode, it destroys everything in its path. Everything. And then Kopej, says that Khan thinks that he's strong enough to resist, and he hopes only the Jedi is going to be destroyed. And then Githany like storms out of there. She's like, "Oh, well, he's insane. Are you coming with Kopej? We're leaving." And Kopej just like very matter-of-factly says, "No, I chose my side a long time ago."
Yeah, Kopej kind of just giving up there, I guess.
Yeah, like it's clearly not out of any like loyalty to Khan or anything. I think it's probably just more that like he's just tired and like tired of fighting.
Right, he is the most apathetic Sith ever.
Yeah, so they end up leaving, and then I think this is where the art does a really good job, and it's when we cut over to Khan, and like he's got like a bandage over his forehead, his eyes are like bugging out, like he's like sweaty, his hair is all like mangled, he has like stubble on his face where he didn't have any before, and he's like, "Oh, it's good to see everyone here, so many, so strong, so invincible." And he's just like talking about how they need to work together as one to defeat the Jedi. And I think like that's where like this artist like really shines, is like showing these very expressive faces.
Yeah, you can definitely see the madness in Khan's eyes in this particular picture of him.
Yeah, it's just really good. And then the other Sith are kind of just like sitting around the caves. And then we cut from the exact opposite of that, from underground and caves to on board the unicorn ship.
Right. The ship of various medieval creatures.
Yeah. And well, not really medieval, but more like ancient Greek.
Like mythical creatures.
Yeah, mythical. And so they're going back and forth, and Farfalla's like super happy that they're gonna be able to go fight, and that everyone's all like, they're all buddies now. And then he pulls out a cask of wine and he says, "First we spill wine, then we spill blood." And everyone's drinking out of like golden goblets.
Yeah, he's got like the freaking he's got the Holy Grail in his hand.
Yeah.
In the background, there's like a dude who just looks like a literal dragon.
Yeah.
Like they just put a dragon neck onto a regular person. There's like a tiefling,
more satyrs,
and a dude wearing like a It's like a Hun helmet.
Yeah. He's literally dressed up like Attila the Hun.
Yeah, definitely very stylized.
Yeah. Then we cut back over to Rain and Law, and Rain's talking about how she can feel the Jedi near them, and then she's asking Law why he's so silent, and then we get depressed Law talking about how he's thinking old thoughts. He remembers old friends and old friends who are all dead friends now. With every friend, a piece of Law is gone, not much Law left. So it's very depressing. Law looks dejected. And then Rain says, "Oh, well, I'm still here, Law. We'll never part, isn't it so?" And again, Law just replies, "Yes, Rain." So it's very, like, just depressing, because again, like, the bouncers, they're drawn to be like these cute floating furry creatures, and the artist does a really good job of, like, they give him like a very sorrowful expression, and he's able to do it, like, because the bouncers only have eyes, like, they don't have a mouth or any other, like, face. So it's very cool that he's able to draw, like, this depressed look using, like, just the eyes, like the way that, like, his brows are kind of down, like his eyes are a little bit, downcast, and he does a very good job, especially with faces. I think this comic does a very good job of. And then we cut over to the Jedi who have been tasked to kill them, and the guy with the bow hasn't slept in 2 days, and he only has one eye, so his eye is like, I imagine his eye is just like super dry.
And he has like, and his one good eye is like tearing up and
Yeah.
stuff.
It's like, yeah, this is definitely medieval times, because they don't have like an eye drop this dude can just put in.
No advanced medicine here.
No, I mean, God, like, me in my house right now, like, if my eyes were dry, I can go upstairs and get my eye dropper and fix that. So then the other Jedi says,
advantage over what I assume is an
well, because this is the guy that Farfalla talked to earlier, and he's like, "What happened to your eye? Sith happened."
That's right.
Yeah, it's that same guy. So he just does not have an eye.
Yeah, it cannot be healed by medicine or Jedi powers.
Yeah. But so then the other Jedi says, "Oh, well, I'll be your eyes then," because for some reason he just won't let the other Jedi use his frickin' bow. And then the other Jedi says, "Oh, there's another one," and they shoot it, the bouncer, and it turns out to be Law with Rain on her back, and Law gets shot in the face with an arrow, and Rain is distraught, and she's so distraught that when the Jedi runs up trying to apologize, she fucking just snaps his neck with the Force.
Yeah, she like levitates him in the air and just
Kirk snap Kirk, and kills him. And then the other Jedi runs up, and she snaps his neck too, and she's distraught. And then we get this really cool scene, or this really cool panel of Bane when he's riding up on his speeder. You can like see him silhouetted in smoke. He's like a ghost, like a specter riding in.
Yeah,
That's
looking
a really
at
cool
that,
scene.
Never noticed that. I've read this comic a few times. I never noticed that. So there's some nice details in this.
Yeah, no, like I said, the artist, it's like a very interesting style of art, but the artist does a really good job of like putting in these subtle little things, and then Bane emerges from the smoke and his eyes are like glowing red.
Or he just has like the troll face smile. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then we cut over to the Jedi who roll up to the exit of the caves, and they end up going in, and they run into Githany and Darvit, who are trying to get out. And there's a really nice bit of foreshadowing here where Githany is talking about how her head feels like it's going to split in half because the thought bomb drains the Force. And so I really like that. And then the little kid that is with Bug and the cook from earlier, who now has blasters, so we get some more blasters here.
All right.
Yeah.
It's like this kid looks like 6 years old and he has a blaster.
Yeah. He's all scared because like there's other people in the caves, and Bug says, "Oh, just be quiet and don't do anything," and then the kid like starts shooting Rash. And so they shoot at them, and Githany and Darvit end up attacking them, and Githany kills the cook, and Darvit kills another child.
Yep.
And then Bug tries to go in and attack Githany, but obviously he's outclassed by Githany, and he ends up using the Force, I guess kind of out of desperation is how I always thought of it when I read this. Because, like, in his head, he's like, listen to me, and, like, this flock of bats end up attacking Githany.
Yeah, pretty cool force technique he used there without any training, but probably just one of those cases where kids can do advanced force techniques because the adrenaline or something.
Yeah, I think it's like he was able to do it. It wasn't like subconsciously, or it wasn't his like he wasn't consciously doing it, and it was like just like a desperation thing. It's not like he like, you know, mind tricked the bats or anything. Like he doesn't wave his hand. He just like closes his eyes and he's like, "Oh, listen to me," like kind of like he's like desperate, like, you know, just listen to me, bats, help me out here. And then they end up swarming Githany. So I like that. I like it when the Force kind of works like that, where like a character will use it like unknowingly, like how like in the Bane novels, how Bane, when he was like playing Sabak, was able to like get like little hits through the Force on like what to do.
Oh yeah, he could get like just like hints of he would know exactly what the next cards would be and all that.
Yeah, so like I like it when and even they kind of do it in episode 1 where like Anakin is like subconsciously using the Force to have better reflexes when he's pod racing.
Yeah, right. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, like stuff like that. I really like how like even though someone isn't consciously using the Force, like if they're sensitive enough to it, like they can still subconsciously use it.
Yeah, they actually did that a lot in the Bane novel with him, like when he's like in the Sith army and he's using like the rifle. He's like he can like see, he was like seeing through walls or I think or something like that, you know, and all this crazy stuff. Yep, Force sensitive stuff is cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting when they do that. But then we get maybe the least cool standoff of all time, where it's like, oh, Tomcat, Bug, and then they're like standing there, like with their lightsabers. Like it's like they're trying to build it up to be like, oh, this is just like Luke and Vader. He's got the blue lightsaber and he's blonde against the guy in the black armor with the red lightsaber. Oh, it's just like or it's just like Luke and Vader, and it's like, no, it's just two kids LARPing as a Jedi and a Sith.
Yeah, the way it's illustrated, you know, it's supposed to be like, you know, edgy and cool and stuff. Like he's all dark with the red lightsaber, and he's all bright with the blue lightsaber. But it's just it just doesn't work. You know, I see what they're trying to go for there, but it's kind of, I feel like it falls flat because it's just, it's two little kids. Bug, you know, his hair is all raggedy and he's wearing rags, and Darvit's in this like too large armor and stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely not a great visual, because that is what we end issue 5 on. And that brings us into the final issue of this series, which is issue 6, which opens with a super cool splash page of...
can we talk about the cover?
Oh, yeah, the cover of 6?
Yeah.
Yeah, take it away.
I just like it. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of indicative of the comic as a whole. You know, you got this like this vaguely Sith-looking alien dude fighting this like Jedi who looks like a Viking, wearing like, you know, like armor and a cape and stuff. And I was just looking at it and it kind of just reminded me of the old like Marvel Star Wars from like the 70s and the 80s, you know, like the bright colors and the style and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know a lot about the old Marvel comics, but it's an interesting cover. I also like that the Jedi has a yellow lightsaber.
Oh yeah, I just noticed that. Yeah, it's like the one yellow lightsaber in this comic. Or well, Farfalla has one, but I don't think did they show him using it?
No, because I was gonna say, you open up the comic and it's a big splash page of battle, and Farfalla has a blue lightsaber. They gave him a yellow one in the
Ooh.
in the Bane novels, which I think is a lot cooler because blue lightsabers are overdone. That's
I
my
believe they called it golden, but yeah, I
well,
always
gold, yellow.
because when I read that, that was the first time I'd ever even heard of a lightsaber being yellow in Star Wars.
Oh, really? I guess the
Yeah.
first time I ever saw it would have been in 2003 when I played KOTOR. So,
Yes, I was a little bit later to KOTOR than you. This is a really cool battle scene though. I like it. The one most like prominent Jedi with like a green lightsaber, it looks like he's wearing like
yeah,
samurai
he's dressed like a
armor.
samurai, and then him and Farfalla are the only ones on this entire page that have lightsabers. Like everyone else has like spears. There's a satyr up at front who has an axe. You can see like swords and stuff. So
Lots of spears. Oh, and there's like a goat dude
with like a sword. But for some reason they
There's
don't.
even a shield. You can see a shield with some arrows poking out of it here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's literally take away the lightsabers, and this is just a D&D campaign. So then we go over, and one of the satyrs, he's like dual wielding. He has like an axe and a lightsaber, and he's like, Lord Farfalla, we've won! And then Kopesh shows up, and he's like, oh, don't spare me. Promise me a death, and you'll receive a warning in return. And then, well, basically, he just off-screen explains that, Khan's gonna use the thought bomb. And then we cut over to Bane and Rain, the most lovely rhyme-sounding duo ever. And, Rain is down on the ground. She's, wiping tears off her face. And she asks Bane who he is. And he replies that, I'm the Dark Lord who will restore the Sith to glory. They call me Bane. Who are you? And she says, I'm a killer too. Then we cut over to the cave again, where the totally epic lightsaber battle between the two kids is happening. And it's not very cool.
Oh, we see Githany pull a bat out of the air and just crush it in her hand like a badass.
Yeah. But yeah, and then there's a pile of bats dead at her feet, and
just been crushing bats while they've been fighting.
Yeah, it's supposed to be this cool, or maybe it's not supposed to be cool. Maybe it's supposed to show that, oh, these are literally just little kids fighting each other with dangerous weapons.
I mean, the one shot of them where they connect, I think, looks pretty good. But yeah, it's a little hard to take serious.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if Bug wasn't in a tube top and shorts.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's a half shirt.
A what?
A half shirt.
Is that not a tube top?
No, a tube top is just, well, it's a tube. A tube top doesn't cover your shoulders. I don't think so.
Oh.
Half shirt is just a shirt, but it's very short.
Belly shirt.
Yeah.
Oh God, fashion advice from Keith on the podcast today.
No, that's not what I said.
All right, but anyways, yeah, basically, Githany just she's just tired of this, just like we're tired of it, seeing these two dumb kids fight, and she uses her whip and cuts off Bug's leg, because this comic is really healthy for the children that are in it.
We get a nice little
snaps, yeah. And Githany, however, has a very valid point of the thought bomb could be activated at any moment, and we have to find Bane. Their speeders are out there, and they can get out of there. And then Darvik kind of hesitates in killing his cousin, but then we cut out to Farfalla approaches Hoth, and he says that he's got the thought bomb in there, and well, Hoth knows because he feels it because it makes the air as thick as congealed blood, which I think they mention in the novel. I think some of this dialogue ends up just going into the novel. Not all of it, but some of it does. Specifically, the congealed blood part, I'm pretty sure is in the novel.
I just remember No, I feel like Khan only found out about the thought bomb once he was told about it, and then after that, he's just like, "Oh, I got to go in there anyway."
Yeah. And then I would also like to point out that there's literally just a dude next to Hoth who is just a knight. Like, he's got a helmet with, like, chainmail hanging off of it, a shield, and a
Yeah, an
sword.
actual shield. Yeah. Wow.
But Hoth, of course, is very brave, and he says, well, if Khan's made it, then he'll use it. It's our only chance to face him. And that, and then Farfalla volunteers himself to go in, and Hoth just says, no, your lives and deaths are for open skies. And then he ends up going in, and he calls out to Lord Khan, who is sitting... I really like the shot. I guess I'll mention before like we get into it, but like Khan, is sitting on like a stone throne, and like there's some Sith behind him, and they look like zombies. Like they're like emaciated, they're like thin, they're like hobbled over. Like it's a really cool shot, and it's very good juxtaposition because Hoth is standing there and he's still like in good shape. Like he still looks very strong. Like he's standing upright. Where all the Sith are like hunched over, like Khan is sitting on the throne and he's like got his hands like in front of his face, and he's like kind of hunching forward. And then Hoth just says, oh, are you trying to scare me, Khan? I'm too old to be scared. All my friends are dead, all the foolish notions that warmed my youth too. I don't mind dying. I would not mind all the Jedi dying if it meant the end of the Sith. And
that's when's Hoth dropping his mixtape?
Yeah. Well, he dropped it, and then he gets dropped because Khan... And again, I will mention that, like, I really love the close-up of Khan's face. Like, his hair, it's all, like, messy. His beard is extra scraggly. As Hoth is talking, like, his eyes, like it in one panel, they're looking to the right, and the other one, he's kind of looking off to the left. Like, he's, like, his mouth is kind of contorted weirdly. And I think it's just a really good shot. And then it's brought to... This coolness is brought to, like, a screeching halt by Khan's terrible, like, one-liner, I guess. Because when Lord Hoth walks in, he says, Lord Hoth, welcome. And then after Hoth says his cool little line, Khan says, Lord Hoth, well gone, and claps his hands, and the thought bomb goes off.
Yeah, I only noticed that because you pointed it out to me. Because like in the first part, he says welcome, but it's well with two L's. Like it's two separate words. Welcome. And then a few panels later, when he's doing the thing, he's like, Lord Hoth, well gone. And it's like, oh, that makes sense, but it's still stupid.
Yeah, I think basically the best way to read this page is take your thumb and put it over Lord Hoth, well gone. Because you get this really cool, like as he says Lord Hoth, like his face is all contorted. It's like really gaunt. You can like see his cheekbones, and his like teeth are gritted, and his eyes are like kind of like bloodshot. You can see the red lines on him, and he's just holding his hands up, ready to clap. And then the next one, his eyes, it's like a close up of just his eyes, and like they're like bugging out, like they're just wide open. You can see like the red lines coming in. And then he claps, and then it cuts over and to Bane and Rain, and yeah, I think it was would have been a lot better without those text bubbles there.
If you just take away those two little text bubbles, the panel is a lot more effective. And I guess Drew Karpyshyn thought so too, because when he rewrote this scene in the Bane novels, Khan basically just doesn't say anything before he claps. He just sees Hoth, and you just see the madness, and then boom.
Yeah, and I think in the novels, it's been a couple years since I've read them, but I'm pretty sure Hoth gives like a similar speech, if I'm not mistaken.
I feel like he doesn't say anything.
That could be too.
He just walks in and Khan sees him, and then that's it.
I'll have to reread that. But anyways, like I had said, after the clap and the thought bomb, presumably goes off, we get Bane and Rain. They're standing over the dead bodies, and basically they just discuss why did Rain kill the two Jedi, and she says to kill was to restore the balance and make life bearable. And then they hear like the thumbing and the rumbling of the thought bomb, and she asks, "What's that?" And Bane just replies, "Han's smartest decision, his suicide." Again, just pointing out that Bane has amazing one-liners. So, then we cut back to the caves, struggle between the two children, and, they're just, like, freaking out, and Bug does have some really good points, because Bug asked Darvit, "You dreamed of nothing but being a Jedi. How did you end up a Sith?" And Darvit replies, "Don't you see? You should see yourself now. You hated it on Somov Rit, trotting in the mud, eating roots and raw fish, and these Jedi were no better." And Bug replies that exactly, no better, no purer, no braver, yet their cause made them noble, made me noble. Don't you see? And then Darvit says, and they're both like crying, he says, "No, these Jedi are not the right ones. Jedi don't die. Jedi live forever. I don't want to die." Which, again, makes sense because he's a child. Like he's like freaked out. He's been on this planet for 2 days, and he's seen like his cousins like dying on the ground in front of him. He thinks that Rain is dead. He's seen like people die. He's killed people, and now it's kind of like all culminating. And I think this is like a really well done like scene here, like better than like, and they should have just skipped out all the lame fighting, but they had to get a lightsaber fight in, I guess.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is a very effective scene in like showing kind of like why Darvit is how Darvit is.
I think also one of the few times we see lightsabers clashing against each other in the entire comic was that scene.
I think it is the only one, except for maybe like little panels and on the cover of the 6th issue, like we don't see like lightsaber fights.
Yeah, it's Githany fights Charney, but it's whip versus lightsaber.
Well, and they never
see them connect.
Yeah, this is, I think, the only time that we see any characters do that, which is interesting that they gave it to 2 kids.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you about the fighting before not being effective, and you're certainly right about this scene being super effective. It's very well done and moody, with the only light being from this red lightsaber that's held at Bug's throat, and he's got tears in his eyes, and there's just all this great dialogue and just character interaction between them.
Yeah, definitely.
Giving their character at the same time that they're doing this and all that. It's really great.
Yeah, and then of course this is interrupted by the shaking of the thought bomb, and Bug starts getting like drained of his life force. Like it's like a Raiders, or it's like a Last Crusade thing where like he like starts getting like aging super fast. Like he starts getting gaunt. Like his by like the 3rd panel of the next page, like he's like skin and bones, and Darvit's still fine, and Darvit's like mad. He's like, "Oh, why you? I have the Force too. It should be draining me. It should be draining me." And then stalactite falls off of the top of the cave and crushes Bug right in front of Darvit.
Of course, if that hadn't happened, Darvit would have like chopped him in half because he was just about to do that.
Yeah.
Really horrifying stuff here.
Yeah, well, either that or he would have ended up in like inside the thought bomb with all the other Jedi and Sith spirits.
Oh yeah, true. So I guess either way he's doing him a favor.
Yeah. So then we cut outside, and it's like the same thing. Githany is trying to escape on a speeder, but it is crushed by a falling rock off of the mountains that the caves are under. And she starts getting drained and like kind of like sucked into like the cave. It kind of looks like she's like gripping at the ground, and it's like leaving kind of like finger trails, and she's like getting sucked in, and like one of her eyes has like fallen out or something.
Oh yeah, like her eyeball popped out. Ooh.
Yeah. And then we cut over to back to Darvit, and he's like, "Bug, say something. What have I done?" And then he leaves the cave, and there's a dude who's like, he's like PTSD, like he's got the 1,000-yard stare. His eyes are like wide open. His face is like freaking out, and he's like, "Oh, they're all dead. They're all gone." And then we get this panel of like the Jedi and Sith and everyone being like, again, like it looks like they're being like sucked into the cave.
Yeah, now that you mention it, because before I just thought this was like a vague panel of them getting sucked into the thought bomb, but no, it looks like they're getting sucked into the actual caves.
Yeah. And then Darvin ends up going into the caves, and he sees the thought bomb, like the big orb. Well, it looks like a big egg, like
Yeah,
floating off the ground. And then we cut outside. Well, and then he walks up to it, and he's like, "All of them inside. I don't understand." And then he like gets like hunched over, like squatting, and he's like, "Oh, I don't understand." Like he's shook.
right. All we need now is for him to get into the fetal position and start sucking his thumb.
Yeah, like he's having like a mental breakdown like upon seeing this. And then we cut outside, and Bane and Rain end up going in, and Rain sees her cousin, and she's like, "Tomcat!" Oh, and Tomcat's happy because Rain's alive. And then Rain says, "Oh, I'm not Rain, I'm Zana." And then Darvit notices this hulking Sith behind her for the first time, and he says, "No, I'll fight you for her." And then Bane, like, he gets like the red eyes, which kind of indicate in this comic that like someone's doing a bad thing. And however, that confrontation is shortly cut off because Zana explodes Darvit's right hand.
Yep, and it's not exactly said here, but you know, you could like see from her facial expression that she kind of did this to, you know, protect Tomcat.
Yeah, well, because Bane asks, "Oh, why did you do it?" And Zana replies that there would be neither joy nor use in his youth in his death. And then that's good enough for Bane because he shows her the thought bomb. He says, "All the Jedi and all their honor and greed and ambition, this is how they end. Death is the only constant, death and life. The Force and its dark side. Imagine being the only servant of the dark side, the embodiment of the eternal certainty. One dark lord and one apprentice." And then like Githany hobbles in, and she's looking like a mummy, and she's like, "I survived, I'll be your apprentice, we'll rule together." And then she like crumbles into dust.
Yeah, pretty gross. Like when she's coming in the armor, it's all saggy, you know, around her. Like she looks like a skeleton.
Yeah.
And then she turns into one.
Yeah, exactly. And then Bane kind of like picks up her skull, and it's like a Hamlet moment, and to be or not to be. And then he ends up pondering, "Oh, she was never able to see past herself. She never understood the dark side." And then he turns to Zana and he says, "Do you?" And then Zana replies, "No, but I'm still young." And then we get a little epilogue because they, of course, leave Darvit alive, and he's kind of recounting this. Well, he just says a night. It's an epilogue, and it's obviously in the future. He's got his right hand bandaged at the stump, and he says, "A night will come, a battle will be fought. Is this all you can tell me about the future? I could have told you as much. There will always be some battle, some night. And my future, I failed as a Jedi, failed as a Sith. What could I hope to become?" And the bouncer that's kind of hovering next to him says, "Man." And then Darvit, he takes that and he says, "A man. Why not?" And then that's the end of the comic. And then obviously, that little prophecy thing that the bouncer was talking about was it's included in the Dark Forces novella, and it's referring to Kyle Katarn defeating Jarek at the Valley of the Jedi, which is kind of established as being this monument to this battle. And we get the building of that happens in Rule of Two, and then it was actually referenced. The Valley of the Jedi was referenced, I think, in '97 when Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight came out. So very interesting that this Dark Horses comic went back and ended up referencing that novella and that game specifically. So a nice little bit of like circular continuity to bring it all back together.
Yeah, that's really cool. I did not know that, and I forget about that little line because in the novel it's just not in there, that part, you know. They have the thing where he's like, you know, what's my future? What will I be? And they're like, man, and he's like, a man. It's like, yeah, but they don't. I don't think they did the little bit of foreshadowing.
No, they didn't. And that line, the whole night will come, a battle will be fought, that's actually pulled straight from the novella too, as well.
Yeah, maybe they took it out because, because when I was reading it right now with the comic. My first thought was, what was going to happen with between Daravit and Johan Othone when he comes, when he comes to the planet. So maybe they didn't want like confusion with that.
Yeah, that could be that they left it out to avoid any confusion. Yeah, that makes sense. Because obviously Johan shows up and he's a Jedi Knight, so yeah, that could be
a battle.
So, and then yeah, I guess they could have gotten the battle mixed up with like the battle that they have on Tython. So yeah, I think they definitely could have left it out for that reason. Or maybe just because, I don't know, if you don't know that, it kind of ends up just seeming like a throwaway line, like, oh, why are they talking about like another battle and all
like
that?
a random loose thread. I do like that though. I like that just random bit of obscure reference to something else in the lore.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I think it works really well, and it's very nice that they tied it all together with Dark Forces 2. So very cool that we get kind of that, and then obviously as you go on to read, like I said, you go on to read the Darth Bane trilogy, and they have the building of the Valley of the Jedi, and then it's kind of like a weird, like you can't really do it in like release date chronological, I guess. You would have to, because obviously you would start with the Bane trilogy, and then you would go back to the game from like the 90s and figure out, the fate of the Valley. But no, it's definitely cool that they kept it in for this anyways. But I guess to wrap it all up with a nice little bow on top, what were kind of like your general impressions about this comic? Obviously you had you read it before we did this podcast? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think I'd read it at least once before doing this.
Okay. Yeah, because I've read this a few years ago. I want to say 2016, 2017, I think, is the first time I read it. I was just browsing around on Kindle, and I saw it, and I'm like, oh, isn't that thing? Because my friend had, way back when I was in elementary school, when I was a little kid, one of my friends had like a visual dictionary or something, or one of those source books, and it had like the backstory on the thought bomb. And I remember it because when I went back and reread the comic, I remember because that visual dictionary or whatever it was, that source book, had that panel of Githany being like destroyed by the thought bomb.
You know what? I think I had the same one. It was the 2007 Visual Guide to the Universe. I still have it. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it had all this stuff in it. Yeah, it had the whole timeline of stuff in it. It showed the comic panels.
Yeah, I definitely remember having seen it before I read the comic book. But no, I think overall, the comic is really good, and the artist, like I had mentioned a lot of times, a lot of praise for the artist of this. They do a really good job of, even though it's a very stylized art style, they're able to like convey emotions and do a very good job at illustrating faces and showing the emotions like on there. Like, and even if it's very subtle, like I had mentioned earlier with Law, like you can tell he feels a lot of sorrow, and he conveys it by only using his eyes, and you can see how like crazy Lord Khan is and how like all that stuff. So the art, I think, while it's certainly a big, I guess, kind of difference from like if you've read like the Republic comics or Legacy or any of those other comics that were coming around in like the late 2000s, early 2010s. Like, yeah, it's going to be a bit of like a shock, like seeing like from that to this. But I think the art is good. The story, like I had mentioned at the start, I think it's definitely Darovit's story, and everyone else is kind of like supporting character to him. But I think it works very well because obviously at this point, especially in Star Wars, and even like to this day, you never see like a story in Star Wars of like a child who is thrown into like this like real conflict. And I think it's a really good job. Even though it's kind of dark and overly gritty and edgy in some spots with like the whole child murder, it's definitely sets its tone very well that this is not going to be like a happy adventure. And I think it does a really, really good job of doing that. So overall,
Yeah.
I would say while it's not like the greatest story ever, and you probably honestly could skip it in favor of reading the novels, I would definitely say it's like a 6.5 out of 10 comic book. Like, read it if if you see it, if it's on sale or anything on Kindle or something. I would pick it up if you can find like a collected issue or something at like your comic book local comic shop or something. I would say pick it up just for like the I guess more or less completionist reading, because you see a lot more stuff from the Jedi point of view in this than you do the Bane novels. So that's a little bit nice, especially since in the Bane novels, Darovit's story in Path of Destruction is like 99% not in it. And you don't really get Darovit's story until Rule of Two, so
Yeah, it's like the prologue.
yeah. So for those reasons, I would definitely say, give it a read. But if you decide, the art's not for you and whatever, it wouldn't hurt anything if you skipped it. But it's definitely an interesting read if you're interested in this time period or kind of the other side of Darth Bane novels. So
It's not a comic you'll like fall in love with and become obsessed with, but it's an interesting read. It's unique to Star Wars comics, I would say.
oh yeah, definitely for sure.
Yeah, do you want me to like give my review?
Yeah,
or-
yeah. Go ahead, give your thoughts. Give it like a number score if you feel like, or a letter grade, however you want to do it.
Right. Yeah, so I definitely agree with you on the rating. 6.5. It's like about there. It's like just good enough, to be interesting and entertaining and not be off-putting. Um I would say it's interesting just as like a supplement to the novel, you know? Like I would say read the novel first and then go and read the comic.
Actually, yeah, now that you mention it, that would definitely be a way better order, because then you kind of get the context for the thought bomb, you get the context for Bane being poisoned, because like in the comic, obviously that just comes out of nowhere. Like that's just how it starts. And you get no context for it. All you get for it later is that Khan ordered it and Githany did it.
Right, and yeah, it's just very interesting. Just kind of just going back, reading the comic. I feel like the comic just makes so much more sense after reading the novel. Like you could read the first Darth Bane book, then read Jedi versus Sith comic, and then you go into Darth Bane 2, and you'll have all the context you need for the story.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that would be a really good way to do it. I guess in that order, like would be the best one. Like read like you said, Path of Destruction, read this, and then continue with the trilogy. Yeah, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head right there, because the comic, like we had mentioned in the issues, like a lot of the scenes can sometimes kind of just come out of the blue, and they have to use kind of clunky exposition to explain things, like the thought bomb. Like that it's an out of the blue explanation as to what it is. Like Kopech just says it. Oh, it's the they concentrate all as one, and then the force is internalized, and then bam, explosion. So
Right. And you could argue that Star Wars is more entertaining when you don't know what's going on, when you don't have the most context, I guess. But I mean, there has to be some context for the story. Like even though like in A New Hope, right? Like you get this whole title crawl before the first scene that it pretty much explains everything.
Yeah,
and if you don't understand it, then the opening shot makes it even more clear what's going on. But you're still kind of thrown for a loop into the story, but you have the general idea of what's going on.
yeah, I definitely think you're right there.
And I guess the general idea of what's going on is Jedi versus Sith, and yeah, that's all. I guess that's all you need to know.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good way to sum it up. Like that's like the main focus is the main character is Daravit, and it shows the conflict of the Jedi, the Sith, like kind of through his eyes, and he gets his like little redemption story in there too, where he decides he's just going to become a man. Obviously, his story doesn't end so happily in the Rule of Two novel, but yeah, that's a discussion for another time because it does not end well.
Do you think that the comic? Do you think it does a good job of like examining the Jedi versus Sith, conflict or philosophy?
I think it does for this time period. Because obviously this was a time where the Jedi, it's like a big contrast with like the prequel era, where like Mace Windu says, we're not soldiers, we're keepers of the peace. At this point in time, the Jedi were soldiers. Like they were a militaristic like force for the Republic. And especially if you read the Bane novels, like the Jedi have their own fleets, their own starships, their own cruisers, their own armies.
Right, the Jedi are synonymous with the Republic at this point.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, and I think even in the novel they mention that like, isn't the Supreme Chancellor in Rule of Two, is it Valorum?
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, he ends up being the first non Jedi Supreme Chancellor in like decades or centuries. I can't remember, but like the Jedi were like in charge at this point because during like the new Sith Wars, like they basically took over. Like they were the heads of state, they were the heads of the military. But yeah, no, it definitely, I wouldn't say it's a great examination of Jedi philosophy, just because this era of the Jedi Order's history is so very different than everything that was kind of before it and everything that would come after. Because at this point, the Jedi are warriors. They're not like peacekeepers. They're straight up the army of light, opposing the Brotherhood of Darkness.
Right.
So I think if you're looking for something a bit more philosophical, this probably wouldn't be the best read. But I think it does introduce an interesting point in their history.
I mean, I guess it kind of just more... I don't know, it just kind of... It shows the Jedi as not being perfect. Like it seems to make a point to do that. Like the Jedi, like they're not exactly like it says it outright a few times. I think Tor says some Jedi are bad or whatever. Like he even says like there are here there there's bad guys on our side and probably good people on the other side or something like that.
Yeah, they definitely do make some mentions of that. But I guess that's something that you could always say about like any of the eras.
Yeah, do you think it's kind of just more like just kind of just thrown in there, just to say, oh, it's gray area or?
Yeah, I think they're definitely trying to drive that home. That like, yeah, it's a war, so like it's not 100% moral.
Right. Yeah, the war is always going to be kind of messed up. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I was gonna say. What was I gonna say? Oh, okay. So you said like Darovit is the main character of this, right? And Bane's story is kind of, I guess, the background to this. So I guess examining Darovit's journey, what could we take out of that? He's kind of like the wide-eyed kid who wants to be a Jedi, and then he kind of
yeah. Well, I guess
Sith, and then at the end he just steps away from all of it.
Yeah, which is very interesting, but I think it's kind of like it's kind of like hero's journey, like the hero's journey like archetype if everything goes wrong at every possible turn. Like his mentor dies before he teaches him anything of like substance.
Yeah.
Like he becomes like he like I had said, like he's a child in like a war zone. And so like he becomes like I guess in a way, like mentally scarred. Like he's like freaking out because he realizes that like this image he had built up in his head is not what like this war is. Like it's gross, it's dirty, people sleep in the mud, people die without like a big story behind them.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
at the end he kind of like, he just rejects all of it. And he's like, "Oh, I'll just be a man." With
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of takes that that classic idea of the heroic Jedi, which you could say was originally was Luke in the original trilogy. Very, even though he does have some bad things happen to him, it's overall very hopeful, and his story is very triumphant and good. He is good, and definitely this kind of takes that I guess like kind of, it almost takes the the reader's idea of what a heroic Jedi is, and challenges it with the way this story is told.
Yeah, and I think that's another good point too, that like, yeah, you could almost challenge the reader in that way, because again, like the Jedi, like they're boots on the ground, sleeping in tents on the mud, and I guess you could get some of that even in the prequels as well, especially with like Order 66, where like you see these Jedi just get like gunned down like they're just Joe Schmoes. So yeah, I think you're definitely right. Like it can also challenge like the reader's notions of like what a Jedi is supposed to be, because obviously in the prequels and other parts of the EU, the Jedi are like peacekeeping monks who like sit in their sit in the Jedi temple and contemplate the Force. And then if they have to, if they're pressed into it, like, yeah, they'll fight in battles and they'll fight wars, but like it's not like their first their first reason for existence. Versus in this, it's like the Jedi are the army of light. They are here to fight the Sith and destroy the Sith. And even Hoth makes a point of it right before the thought bomb goes off, that he would let all the Jedi die just if it meant the Sith being gone.
Yeah.
So it's not like the Jedi Order at this point in time is really like I've said, it's very different from anything before or after, where
the climax where the Jedi would usually win. You could say the Jedi won, but did they really? When Hoth had to sacrifice himself and get sucked inside the thought bomb.
Well, I mean, they still win. They definitely win, but like then if you look at the big picture of it, like, oh well, how many Jedi died? Because this is the 7th Battle of Ruusan, so like how many Jedi died? Just on this one crappy little planet, and then how many Jedi died in this entire war, in this entire 1,000-year period of the new Sith Wars? Like, yeah, they win, but like you could probably say it's a Pyrrhic victory, where like they've lost so many Jedi, and the Jedi Order has been so fundamentally changed that like, yeah, you're right. Like, is it really a win? Like, because then we get the Ruusan Reformations, where the Jedi have to give up all their command of, and they have to give up their command of the militaries and their like fleets. Right. And the Army of the Light's disbanded, and then that's when they start going back to what the Jedi Order was before. Like they're going back to being like monks who like their main duty is to like I guess more not really be peacekeepers, but like they're back in that traditional role.
Right, the more prequel, it kind of shows them moving more towards their prequel era counterparts.
Yeah, definitely. So
of course, the context for any of this, but
oh yeah, no,
I really appreciate what they did there with the whole overall story. They took like in the Ruusan Reformations and all that, taking like these really militaristic Jedi and like this horrible battle, and it ultimately leads to them kind of renouncing this soldier-like way that they had to adopt in order to defeat the Sith. Now the Sith are dead. They're like, okay, let's make everything nice again.
Yeah, well, and not even just the Jedi like go back to being the way it was before. Like the Republic is also changed, because after this, the Republic doesn't have any fleets. It doesn't have a standing army anymore. So
that's right.
So yeah, the events of like this, you could argue the events of this comic end up through later media, specifically the Rule of Two novel, end up drastically changing like the Jedi from what they are in this time period, as well as the Republic. So that's also a very good point.
Yeah, very much influences the the next era.
Yeah, definitely. So do you got any other kind of thoughts on your head for kind of the rest of this, or?
I don't know. It's just I just love little, just random bits of continuity in the stories. I like I appreciate the attention, the reverence that they gave to the continuity of Rusan originally in the Dark Forces, and it seems like that kind of reverence that they had for the continuity and the storytelling carries over to the Bane novels. You know, they very much kept up that level of uh just introducing continuity from other things in order to support, you know, your new lore that you're making.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, just yeah, I very much appreciate this comic and what it did for, you know, Legends as a whole.
Yeah, no, definitely kind of became like a jumping off point that a lot of other stuff would make, especially the Bane novels, which obviously would take this story, rework a couple things, add some background and context for the character of Bane, and then just keep going with it. Yeah,
Context.
yeah.
Like,
So,
wait a minute, who is this Bane guy? Let's tell his entire origin story. There we go. That should do it.
yeah, definitely. And then, but yeah, overall, so like we've talked about, to sum it all up and wrap it all up, I would definitely say, give the comic a read. It's slightly above an average comic, so, check it out. Don't go out of your way to really see it. If you ever see it on sale or something, pick it up. And then, Ethan, unless you don't have anything else to say, I suppose that would be it.
Yeah, that's all for me.
All right, awesome. So we will see you next time on the Legends Library podcast. Until then.
Later.